Good evening, everybody. My name is Peter Fay, and I'm from IBM. And welcome to Cambridge, and we're really excited about the event. We're partnering with the National Braille Press on this evening. Just to give you a little background about this facility, we just renovated this space in the fall of last year, and we just opened it up to the public for our customers and our business partners in January. So you're one of the first groups of people that are going to get to see the new facility. So this is an auditorium space, and we can divide this into two halves. So if we have two smaller meetings going on, the wall pulls right down the middle, we have AV for each side. And so for a good sized event like this, we just slide the wall back and we can accommodate everybody. The main portion of the program this evening is going to be in this room, but then afterwards, we're going to go up to the second floor and we're going to have a nice reception. And you're all invited to come up and you'll be able to walk around and see all the fun stuff that we're doing upstairs. This particular center is where we bring in our customers and our business partners. We do product type presentations here, we do meetings, and we also do training. When customers purchase our products, they need a place to go and get trained. So the business partner comes in here and we run classes, and as you see upstairs, we have lots of computers, lots of monitors, and lots of fun things to keep all the technical people happy. Just to give you a little background about myself, I work in IBM research, and I am part of a group called the Human Ability and Accessibility Center. And we really have two missions within IBM. We have an internal mission to help our product groups make sure that all of our technology and solutions that we build are accessible when they get out to our customers, so that people with disabilities have the same access to information that everybody else does. We also have another internal role where we work with our internal IT department to make sure that all the internal systems we use to run our business are accessible to all our employees. And so we've been spending a lot of time focusing on this. In fact, IBM just turned 100 years old 2 years back, and we hired our first employee with disabilities back in 1914. So we've been doing this for quite some time. Thank you. Now, we also have an external role in IBM research working with our clients. Because obviously it's not just the IBM products, we want our clients to be able to have their websites, for example, that are accessible to everybody. So when a blind person goes to the web, to your website, they should be able to easily navigate with their screen reader, just as everyone that has sight can do with their mouse and keyboard. We're also working with universities, and we're doing joint research in this area, and also collaborating with organizations like National Braille Press, American Foundation for the Blind, and other organizations. We really span the whole area of disability. And then finally, and this is really the part of the business that I'm responsible for, is cultivating our relationships with the advocacy groups like National Braille Press. And of course, Brian Mcdonald, Jennifer, the whole team have just done a fantastic job of collaborating with us, and we see some big things coming out of the relationship going forward. So without further ado, I would like to invite Brian Mcdonald, President, National Braille Press, to come up, and he's going to be your MC for the evening.
Making sure that's working, thank you. Thank you, Peter. I want to first welcome all of you for braving the cold and coming out tonight. We're really excited to have you here. It's going to be a really remarkable event. I do want to, it sounds like thank you. I want to thank you, Peter Fay, again. Frances West, who is also a trustee of National Press, and she is the director of Peter's unit, for helping us always and being such good friends and corporate partners with National Braille Press, and obviously using these great facilities. And I also want to thank an anonymous donor who funded this whole program tonight for us, and actually also funded for us to have Rosemary's book created in an e-Braille format for downloading. So that is also a really great appreciation. I believe that all people are given a unique, extraordinary talent in them. And you'll see with our guests tonight that they have found that early on in their lives, and they have remarkable gifts that have happened because of their abilities. We're excited first to have Rosemary Mahoney speak to you tonight, and to hear about her experiences in Tibet and India, which led to her new book, For the Benefit of Those Who See, Dispatches from the World of the Blind. Rosemary is the author of 5 previous books. 3 were New York Times notable books, and 1 was a National Book Critics Circle Award. You may have recently heard her on National Public Radio, and she recently did an opinion piece in the New York Times, so you know we're in for a real treat tonight. My mic is breaking up, sorry about that. We're also honored to have us tonight again, Sabriye Tenberken and Paul Cronenberg, founders of Braille Without Borders. I first met Sabriye in 2008 when I had just started at National Braille Press, and she received our hands-on award that year at our gala. And she told a remarkable story about founding the blind school in Los Angeles. So, for those of you who attended that gala, you certainly got a nice treat and an early exposure to it, but much more has happened since. So we're really grateful to have you here again and to hear the important work that's been going on. But first, let's hear from Rosemary Mahoney. Rosemary,
thank you, Brian. Very nice introduction. Still not on. Hello. Just a minute, I'll deal with it. Let's see. I don't have to shout. It's on, it isn't okay, so you hear me. Yes, it's true. I wrote a book that is about blindness in general. More specifically, it's about the time that I spent at Braille Without Borders with Sabriye Tenberken and Paul Cronenberg. And then the time that I spent at I call it their sister institute. They started another institute in southern India at that time it was for blind adults from all over the world. Social entrepreneurs who wanted to start their own schools for the blind, social organizations, to spread awareness and to change society. I think the subtext of this book, more specifically, this book is actually very personal. And it's about the transformation I made from being a person who was terrified of blindness. I'm not related to anyone blind. I've never really met a blind person before I met Sabriye. I always had a terrible fear of losing my eyesight, and I used to think I would rather die than go blind. And some people say to me, how do you dare say that in front of blind people? And I say, well, I dare say it because it's true. And also because I don't think I'm the only sighted person who feels that way, or some level of related feeling. I won't say I was afraid of blind people, but I was never entirely comfortable in the company of blind people until I actually came to know a few of them. And again, I think there are a lot of sighted people who feel that way. Many people have said to me, why is it that when I meet a blind person, I feel like I have to shout at them? They're not deaf, they're blind. Or another friend of mine said, I saw a blind guy on the street the other day and I felt suddenly very guilty, which is a feeling I used to have. They're blind, I'm not, I'm so lucky, I can see the world. It's a very complex mix of emotions that sighted people have when they're not familiar with blind people. And this is historic. This has been going on for millennia across cultures. There are 3 ways that the blind are generally perceived and have been perceived forever. The blind are either stupid idiots who can't be trained, they're mentally deficient, they can't be educated, so forget about them. Or the blind are evil, because in a lot of cultures, I mean in ancient Greece and biblical times, blindness was considered a punishment for some sin that the blind person committed. I know I've said this before in the Gospel according to Mark. Jesus is on the road with his disciples, and they meet a blind man. And the disciples say to Jesus, "Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" That was the only option. The blindness was a result of sin. And this was true in so many cultures, and it is still true in many cultures. The third way that the blind have been perceived is that sighted people have forever thought the blind have supernatural powers. They have ESP, they can put a curse on you. Now, all of these things there is a reason for these things. I think that one in particular is fascinating to me, and I think that comes out of the amazing ability that blind people have, after they go blind, to develop their other senses in ways that are so acute and make them so attuned to what's around them that sighted people can't imagine ever being able to do that. I'll give you an example. When I was on the campus in India, there were about 40 people on that campus, and one night, I used to think it's easy to hide from a blind person. I learned the hard way, it isn't. They know you, they know where you are, they even can know what you're doing. And this is where that thing about, supernatural powers comes from. I'm walking up a pathway in the campus, and I see this guy coming from a blind German guy. And I had a lot of work to do. I was a little bit in a hurry, and usually I would say to my blind students, "Hi, Joseph, hi, Betty," so that they would know I was there. And they know from your voice right away who you are. So I thought, I'm not going to speak to him. I want to get back to my desk. He's 5 feet away from me, and he says to me, "Hi, Rose." And I stopped in my tracks, and I said, "Robbie, how on earth did you know it was me?" And he said, "The sound of your footsteps." And I said to him, "Come off it. That simply can't be possible. There are 40 people on this campus, and you can distinguish my footsteps from everybody else's?" And he said, "Yes, because you walk faster than anyone else on this campus." And it's true. I'm always in a hurry. Another girl said, I was typing in the computer room, and I was in there alone. Blind Norwegian girl comes in. She starts her typing, and finally she says, "Hi, Rose." And I say, "How do you know it's me?" She said, "The sound of your typing, you type faster than anyone else." Now, you see, it wouldn't occur to us to notice the sound of somebody else's typing. But we too can do it. We don't need to, because we have our vision. We see that it's Rose, we see that it's Robin. So all of these superstitions, they have reasons. I mean, this evil thing, well, there is no real explanation for that, but I think it comes partly from, if we close our eyes and we think, blackness for the rest of my life, this is something akin to death. And we abhor death. It's horrifying to us. And so we identify it as somehow connected to sin. I mean, the ancient Greeks, if they really wanted to punish a guy, they would gouge his eyes out. It's the worst thing that can happen to you, right? So I was sent to Tibet to write an article for the Oprah magazine about Sabriye. And, I was interested in that. I was curious about Tibet. But as I was on the plane, I was thinking, this might be difficult. I'm not sure that I really know how to interact with a blind person. And I even thought, how am I going to talk to her? And I tried to imagine what she would be like, and I think my imagining was the same imagining most sighted people have. She's blind. Therefore, she's going to be a little bit helpless, maybe a little self-pitying, maybe even kind of boring. Because if you're blind, how many interesting experiences can you have? And she's probably going to be a little bit humorless. I knew she was smart because I read this book she wrote, and she did some amazing things. But I was a little apprehensive. Then I met her, and within 5 hours, I confess, I was not only amazed by her, but thoroughly amused by her. She has a great sense of humor. She's a bit irreverent. And she teased me. And I love to tease people. And so the moment she teased me, I thought, oh, now I feel comfortable with her. Because if she feels she has a right to tease me, I can tease her. And so suddenly, she wasn't a blind person. She was just a person who had a personality that appealed to me. The first day that I met her, I was sitting across her desk from her. And I asked her a question. I was interviewing her. And she answered me, and I began to write in my notebook, which was in my lap. And she said with exasperation, oh, God, you're writing what I've said. And I was really surprised. I said, how do you know I'm writing? The notebook was here. She didn't know my notebook was in my lap. She said, well, it was the way your voice changed when you began to write. Your voice went low, down, it was directed lower. And I said, well, that could have been anything. I could have been looking at my fingernails. I could have been looking at my shoes. And she said, I've been interviewed so many times. I know what a writing voice sounds like. The other thing I noticed, anywhere I walked in that room, she followed me with her eyes. She really looks at you. And I started to think, and I said this in the book, I began to doubt she was really blind. So, do you know what I did to test her? Please don't be offended by this. I'm really not a profane person. I did this. I put my little finger up and held it at her to see if she would have that natural defensive response. No. She really is blind, but she said to me, you don't believe I'm blind. So for me, this was the beginning of a real transformation. I met blind people at Braille Without Borders and in India who were so capable and so not self-pitying and so dynamic and so confident and had really big dreams of doing great things. And they taught me a tremendous amount. And one of the things I learned, and I believe that anybody in this room can learn this, if you don't have your vision to depend on, you're forced to develop the remaining senses. We don't. We don't know how little we lose our hearing, our sense of smell, our sense of touch. And I really figured this out for the first time when two blind Tibetan teenage girls blindfolded me and walked me across the city of Lhasa to a temple that they wanted me to visit. So they knew where they were going. And they navigated so effortlessly and so smoothly. And I kept asking them, well, how do you know we turn left here? And every time they would say, well, didn't you notice such and such a sound? Didn't you notice the smell of burning incense? Didn't you notice the way the pavement changed under our feet? And even though these were all things that anybody could notice, I didn't notice them because I'm not used to relating to the world that way. So suddenly I realized, we say that blind people have a physical disability. Sighted people also have a physical disability because blindness is really autocratic and overpowering. I mean, it's a great gift, but we also lose a lot because it's so powerful. There's a little thing that I just want to read. Where am I?
I'm good.
I don't want to go on too long. I was living in a dorm at the school in India with, how many was it, 10 blind women. And after a month, I totally forgot they were blind. When you spend time with blind people, that's not the first thing that you think about them. Because what you think about is who they are and their sense of humor. So I was living with these women, and one day I was in a bedroom with 5 or 6 of them. And one of them happened to ask me, there was a noise outside the window, and one of them happened to ask me, by the way, Rose, what is the view outside our window? And I was kind of taken aback, and I thought, oh, that's right. They don't know what this place looks like. So I began, let me see if I can find this. I think I can. I began to, now these are all incredibly intelligent, capable women with really progressive ideas. So I began to describe to them what I could see from the window. I went on describing what I could see from the window. The ice cream bike, I'll explain that later. The children, the men with their brooms, and finally Yoshimi, a blind Japanese girl, said, "It must be very beautiful." I turned from the window, slightly taken aback, and at a loss as to how to respond to this. While the view here had certain small charms, I would not have classified the place as beautiful. I have to confess, I don't love India. I find the climate difficult, and I don't love the tropical jungle, and it's very subjective, this. So, while the view here had certain small charms, I would not have classified the place as beautiful. But the perception of beauty is subjective. Did my vision give me greater authority in assessing whether the place was beautiful? Sight was one thing, sensibility was another. In saying that the place must be beautiful, Yoshimi seemed to be deferring to my sighted opinion, bestowing on me an authority that I didn't feel I had a right to accept. I didn't think this place was particularly beautiful, but many people did. And I was curious to know how she and the others perceived their surroundings before I contributed my interfering and not entirely appreciative perspective. They must by now have created an image of their environment. "What do you think?" I said. "In your mind, is this place beautiful?" Propped up in her bed, Yoshimi said yes, she thought it was beautiful. She based this on the sound she could hear. The birds, the babbling of the turkeys, and the lowing of the cows, the Indian voices, the rattling of the palm fronds in the wind. And she based it on things she could feel: the coconut trunk and its long fronds, the smooth mango leaf, the cool lake water, the feel of the movement of the air. She had determined that the place was beautiful. The other blind women had too. Their sightless perception was as real to them as my sighted perception was to me. In her book, My Path Leads to Tibet, Sabriye Tenberken has written about this question, and I'm going to quote from her now. What is the definition of real? Does it mean that for sighted people, reality is limited to what their eyes see? Is priority afforded to visual impressions, which overwhelm the other sensory perceptions? If the eyesight is privileged, as is the presumed case for those who can see, are we implying that the other senses do not contribute to the total perception of reality? I once asked Jessie, that she was a completely born blind German woman. I once asked Jessie, blind since birth, how she imagined human faces. Her quick response was, "I don't." A person's face was not for her the locus of an individual's being. Physical appearances were irrelevant. She turned her attention to the voice, to the words it created, to the mood, the ideas it formed, and this was fully satisfying for her. She and her blind colleagues lived in a realm dominated by thought rather than appearances and visual details. A blind writer wrote a book that I love. His name is John Hull. And at one point in this book, he says, sighted people live in the world. Blind people live in consciousness. And I immediately thought, how many people do I know who have spent money, good money, to go to an ashram in India to learn to live more in consciousness, right? And I confess, at the end of that book and at the end of Sabriye's book, I know this is going to sound weird, but I found myself slightly envying these blind people who have learned how to use their minds to much greater advantage than I feel I did. So I think maybe that's enough for now. Maybe Sabriye, do you want to? Oh, the video, yeah.
Sorry, that's a good one. Forgot about goddamn security. I had everything else. Yeah.
Oh, Paul, can you just explain to the audience what the video is?
So we have to hold it for a second, Paul.
Hello, yes. Okay, so we're gonna watch a little clip on the project that we've set up in Tibet, Braille Without Borders, and right afterwards we're gonna comment to what you've seen.
In our school, we learn to read and write in 3 languages.
母汤面对心很像一个大火球，有点到这上。Tired husband to help her wash up. He rushed for safety. This is a Braille machine. This is Germany. This is China. This is the Chinese class. 连夜和甜甜，江南德感人。连夜和甜甜。连夜和甜甜。This is the Rebet class. After Rebet class, we go to regular school. All were trained to become a Muslim. The first 5 graduates opened their own clinic.
When we want to have fun and to buy things, we go downtown. Listen to the music of the traffic in the city. Linger on the sidewalk as the neon signs are pretty. How can you do?
Our cook and house parents make delicious food.
In the evening we play.
Hold on 1 second, I have to introduce you. Oh, what I gotta do? Hold on. This is low rehearsed. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Rosemary, for your thoughtful and honesty and your inspiring words. It was really good to hear from you. I'm sure everyone will want to buy your book, which coincidentally we'll have upstairs. And we also have Sabriye's book, My Path Leads to Tibet, will be upstairs. And even National Braille Press's book on Louis Braille will be up there as well. So that's my sales pitch for the evening. You'll get the opportunity to ask questions, as Peter said, upstairs during or after this, actually. But I do want to introduce Sabriye and Paul to have them talk about all the things that have happened since. So without any further ado, Sabriye and Paul.
When we started this project, we faced many, many difficulties. It's not an easy place to start projects. Tibet is kind of tough. There's there's a lot of different reasons for that. I won't go into details right now. One of the biggest challenges, however, was how could we give our kids that came from the margins of society, how could we give them hope for their future? And this other thing is, it's not only for blind people, but it's for anyone in the world. It's like we all have to have some goals in life. And when these kids came to us, some came directly from a dark room, and they were locked away all their life. And we thought, what can we do to give them a future to look forward to? And Sabriye and I, we ourselves like to dream, and we like to dream big. And we started a dream factory. And we asked our kids, we said, we want you to dream what it is that you want to do. We all have to work for 40 years in our lives. And if we don't do something that we love doing, we have to work. That's horrible. We become the people that are like, thank God it's Friday people. You know those people. We don't want to have that. So we asked our kids to dream, and we said, please think of something that you love doing. And if you can do it or not, doesn't matter. So we gave them 1 week time, and after 1 week there's Nobu, and you saw him. He's right there actually on the screen. And he said, with a smile on his face, I want to become a taxi driver. So the only thing is he doesn't see. And but if you look at all the taxi drivers in the world, so we never say, and this is Braille Without Borders, we say, we never say something is not possible. That's the Without Borders up here. So we said, that's a wonderful dream. So 2 years later we asked Nobu, what about the status of your dream? And he's 10 years old, and he smiles, and he says, now I understand, maybe it's better I don't become a taxi driver. But I can set a taxi company and run it. And I think that's for a 10-year-old. I don't hear many 10-year-olds say that kind of stuff. So maybe Sabriye can share a little bit about what we started up and what is happening right now.
Is it on? Not really. No, not really. I can speak very loud. What is the projection?
Sorry, she's the only person I've ever met who can talk more than I can.
So I try not to prove this prejudice. So now, the Dream Factory was actually done in my school when I was a young student, or when I was a teenager. I was in a special school in Marburg, in a school for the blind. In my opinion, it's one of the best schools. Somebody here from Perkins? Sorry, I think it's one of the best schools in the world for the blind. And I tell you why. This school is not overprotecting the kids at all. We are not living in a boarding school, in a boarding facility. We lived in flats. We could choose with whom we wanted to live, students, boys, girls, all mixed together. We were living in the city itself, so we had to go our way. We had to drive to the school every morning with public transportation. We had to go home in the afternoon. We had to buy our own things. We had to do finances, bookkeeping, and so on and so forth. Now, additionally, the school managed to have very high expectations academically.
And they didn't say, okay, you're blind, you should not do math or you should not do science. In the opposite, you know. So languages and science both was very, very strong in the school. And one thing they did very right, in my opinion, they taught us a lot of sports. And it was sports that were seen as risk sports in the eyes of a sighted person. So, for example, downhill skiing, but also trampoline, but horseback riding, of course. But very, very clear, what I loved most was whitewater kayaking. And what was great, right now, we just went to the Care Center for the Blind. There were a lot of people who became blind at a later age, or recently blind. And they asked me exactly that. Nobody asked me before, what kind of sports did you do? And I thought, yes, my favorite sport was actually whitewater kayaking. And my teachers were amazing. They were passionate about whitewater kayaking. And they were encouraging us to really learn the techniques and the tools very well. And then they said, then the whole world is open to you. And the fact that they trusted me to go in a single kayak down the Upper Isar, which is quite a wild river. I mean, it's class 4. It's not too bad, but of course it's not very wide. The river is not very wide, so they could have. They saw me all the way down. They ran next to me on the banks. But it was quite technical. And the fact that they trusted me, that I could do it without any danger, gave me a lot of confidence. And it gave me a boost to really stand up in life and say, well, if I can do this, I can do a lot of other things as well. Now, we had a great philosophy teacher in this school. And he once came into our classroom and he said, well, is there a life after high school? And you know what? We didn't like the sport because we loved the school so much. And for us, life was a bit scary outside of school. What would come afterwards, you know? Despite the fact that we were very mobile, very, we knew how to do finances, we knew how to do all this stuff. We felt we were very well educated, and I think we were very educated. But still, there is some kind of fear of the sighted world, or of the world outside, of the world in university, of the world in a job, in a profession. And then he said, you know what? You should not think about the limits. You should really think about what you want to do. And that's how I got the sport of going to Tibet. Basically, what I wrote down was I wanted to have an adventurous life. And I wanted to travel. And I wanted to travel without a sighted person. Because it's really annoying and I have this, Paul and I, we travel sometimes together, sometimes not. And I really must say, when I'm traveling with Paul, they always talk to Paul. You know? And they say, well, is she hungry? And then Paul looks at me and says, are you hungry? And I said, no, she's not. But she can speak. So this is something that doesn't happen to me. When I'm traveling on my own, somehow by selection I meet the intelligent people, I meet the people who want to talk to me, I meet the people who are interested in what I'm doing and what I want to do and where I'm heading on. And I meet very interesting people. For example, we just talked about it right before we came here on stage to Paul, I'm not sure, was it Paul? About being safe, whether it's safe to travel alone through India. And I said, well, I managed to travel alone in Mumbai at night. And everybody is bashing India for being unsafe. You know, I didn't feel unsafe. And you know what? The thing was, little street children, they came to me and they put their dirty hand in my maybe a little bit dirty hand, and they said, well, can we help you? And they showed me around in moonlight. And then I wanted to give them something, because I figured out that they were street children, and they said, no, ma'am, you are one of us. Well, maybe they looked at my clothes, so they thought. So So this is something that I experience when I travel on my own. I really experience very, very friendly people and interesting people. And this was something that I wrote down. I wanted to travel. I wanted to have adventure. I wanted to contribute to society. And this is something that Paul also said this afternoon in the Carol Center. It's really important. You can only taken serious by society when you are actually able, or when people allow you to contribute to society, and when you feel that you have a purpose in life. So I wanted to have a purpose in life, definitely, but I didn't know what kind of purpose. So I thought maybe Tibet would be the first good place to be. And I thought Tibet is probably one of the more adventurous places. And white water, there's definitely white water, there are horses. So that's why I came to Tibet, and that's where I found this Tibetan boy. No, he's not Tibetan. He is very Dutch. But he was one of the very, very few people that didn't think that I was totally insane, and that actually wanted to talk to me, and who made fun with me, you know, and we had the biggest jokes. And a lot of people, they thought we knew each other for ages, and it felt like it. And actually there was one person, I just told this for the first time the day before yesterday, and why not now again, you know? There was one Israeli, beautiful Israeli woman, and she had a big crush on Paul. And she asked me whether I could introduce him to me, and I said, well, why? I should rather take him myself. So I did in the end. Despite the fact that he has blonde hair, I prefer black. But anyway, so now
Too much information.
some things we keep private. Yeah, exactly. So now, very, very shortly, what are we doing now? We have handed the project in Tibet almost over to the boys and girls from the first and second generation. So they are not boys and girls anymore. They are 24 to 28. One of them is sitting here. Just by coincidence, we ran into her. She is traveling for the first time out of China, and she came to Boston to see a friend. And today she is here with us. Gudrun, just get up. Gudrun, Nima, and Gensen, this is the gang of three. They are actually running the preparatory school, and they will hopefully also start an entrepreneurial center in Shigatse, in Tibet. A center which is also pretty unique, I think, or rather unique in the world, because what we want to do is the fact that blind people don't get jobs is mainly because of is also because the people don't have trust in blind people. So we think, like, before they don't get a job at all and don't get employed, why not empowering them to employ themselves? And therefore we want to start an entrepreneurial center where we train blind people in all kinds of business skills. In different levels, of course. I mean, you can be a hotel manager as a blind person, why not? And you can also run your little shop in your village, why not, you know? So there are many, many different ways how to employ yourself and how to also be an employer of others. And now I come to the point which is the bridge to our current life. Do I still have a little bit? Yes. Time? Okay, good. So now, 2 years ago, there was a study by Zhigang, by a journalist, a Chinese journalist, and he made a study about our kids and what came out of these kids, especially from the first and second generation. And what he found out was quite surprising to him, but also to us. All these kids, they either went to regular schools and are very successful in regular schools. Well, some of them passed away, unfortunately, due to cancer. But all these ones who survived and who did not go to regular schools became business entrepreneurs. And very successful business entrepreneurs. We have people like Tenzin and Tashi, they have the biggest massage clinic from all over Tibet. They're selling cold drinks, they're doing all kinds of, they have employed quite a lot of people. Tenzin built a house for his mother in the village. We have Dachung, who has 3 massage clinics, and he wants to start now a hotel in Lhasa. He was never in school. He's an orphan. He was never in school, or he was maybe in school for half a year, and he hated it. And then he went out of school. He dropped out of school, and now he's running 3 massage clinics. So there's one who's running a kindergarten for blind and sighted children. Now Jürgen, Nima, and Jensen are running the project in Lhasa, which we have started and we have founded, and so on and so forth. So a lot of these people are quite successful, and we were wondering, why is that? Why is that possible? In a region where blindness is seen as a punishment for something you have done in your past life, why is it possible that somebody who went never to school, like Nima, like Dachung, that they are so successful in life? Now, one thing, the fact that they are marginalized in society gives them the possibility, or puts them in a position where they have nothing to lose, where they can really risk something. The fact that they are in these margins, or that they are coming from the margins, they also develop a lot of empathy and ethics. They know it's very important to be transparent, to be communicative also, and to stick to what they are saying. Also, they learned not to be necessarily everybody's darling. When you start your own stuff, you cannot be everybody's darling. You have to sometimes you have to stand your ground. And also, of course, these kids have a lot of energy and they have a vision. And in this way, they are, for us, they are kantaris. Now, what is a kantari? A kantari is someone who is from the margins of society, who has fire in the belly, who has the energy and the guts to challenge the status quo, to challenge conventions, and who has the possibility to come up with new solutions for old and new problems. But where does the word kantari come from? It's a very small, it's a tiny chili that is very spicy. It's one of the spiciest chilies in the world. And it grows in the backyards of society in Kerala. So in the margins of society, it actually grows wild. Nobody feeds it, nobody takes care of it. It's just there. And of course, it has medicinal values. It's used in Ayurveda for a lot of reasons. For example, to make somebody very alert and very awake, to purify blood, and to lower down the blood pressure. So it's very helpful actually for the world, for the people. And therefore, we created this new term, this new paradigm of leadership, which we called Kantari. Now, Kantari is nowadays a center in the south of India. The southern tip of India is 8,000 kilometers away from Tibet. It's in the tropics, as Rose described it. We think it's beautiful, by the way. Yeah, it may be because I don't see, but we have a beautiful lake, but that's not the thing. We have beautiful people. We have the most amazing people from all around the world, from Africa, from Asia, also some from America, from Europe, but not so many. And these people, they come with a big dream and a big vision, with a lot of energy, with a lot of fire, and they want to learn how to run social projects, how to make their social dreams come true. And we have experts or catalysts from all around the world, like Rose, who come for short-term or for long-term, and who empower these social visionaries to jump back into their societies and start their own campaigns or social projects. Half of them are blind, the other half are war survivors or street children, former sex workers, people who have been trafficked, people who are fighting against female genital mutilation because they needed to escape from that, people from certain tribes, people who are coming from poverty, people with very different backgrounds. All of them have a great and amazing story to tell. And the story is not pathetic. The story is not actually saddening. The story of these people, of these young people, young and older people, is very, very hopeful because they all are positive and looking positive into the future, and they have a medicinal solution. So we just one more sentence, and then I hand over. We just say, a lot of times when you have big dreams, and maybe you tell this to your kids, you know, a lot of times when kids have big dreams, or when even adults have big dreams, people come and say, "Ah, you are too small, you know, you cannot do this, it's not possible, stay on the ground, don't grab for the stars." And what we say, you just tell them, just bite into a cantari. And you know that a small chili can make a huge difference. Thank you very much.
So we'll take your questions now, and I would just ask if just raise your hand, and we do have a mic if you'd like to use the mic, or you can just stand up and be loud, and whatever you prefer. So the panel will answer your questions as you raise your hands. Thank you.
Don't be shy.
Sabriye, this question is for you. Sabriye, you speak at least 3 languages, Tibetan and German and English fluently, and more maybe. I'm just curious whether you have found any comparisons of those languages as one is more conducive to explaining the world of blindness, if one language is more blind-friendly, if you will.
That's an interesting question. I think German is very precise. German is one of the very precise languages. We have words that exactly describe especially visual things, but then also things that you cannot see. We have a lot of emotional words, like Wut, for example. I love the word Wut, and I never heard it in English. I don't really know what Wut is. I always describe it as a creative, constructive rage. And this is something that is very important to me and to many other blind people also, because Wut is a part of us. We can only become proactive when we are wütend, when we have Wut. Yeah? So a lot of these emotions you can express in German. I'm very much at home in German. I'm not so much at home in English. And of course Tibetan, my Tibetan gets a little rotten by now because rusty, yeah, exactly, because I have not used it much. Yeah, I don't know, I cannot.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe German is the language that describes precisely.
Hi. You said, as you were speaking, that the school is now being taken over by the second generation, and I'm not really... Second generation students. So, are they parents of current students? When I hear generation, that's what I think of, or are they just older students?
No, we started in 1998, and the students that back then came in, they were between 5 and 15. And so they grew up, and Nima is one of the examples that Nima was trained, actually, just to share what kind of people we have. Nima was born in a village way outside of Lhasa. It's about a 3-4 days travel to get there. It's in the east of Tibet. And he was born as a twin, and he had a silent sister. The father died shortly after they were born, and the mother couldn't handle the fact that she had a blind son. And she left the babies at home, and she left to Lhasa, and she left them to die. So luckily they cried, and the neighbors found out, and they saved him. And he grew up with his grandma, and the sister grew up with an uncle. And the grandma, he found, well, somehow he ended up in our school. The mother so abandoned him, and when he was 14, when he was in our school, the mother came to our school, and she came to Lhasa with him, and she said, okay, you know, maybe he could beg, you know, you want to put him on the street to generate income. And then luckily he found our school, and we found that he was he was very talented, very quickly in picking up things, and we sent him to England to learn English in Thomas. And he came back and he went to Kandari, our school in Tibet, in Kerala. And then he came back to Lhasa, and he's one of the people that is now managing the school. Yudun here is also, Yudun went to regular school for a little bit. Then she came back, she became a teacher at our school. I know she's working, and actually she's going to marry, if I may say, Yudun. She's going to marry Nima. And Benjamin as well was one of her first students, and he now runs our Braille library. Also, he was educated in Kerala. So we have the first generation or the second generation students we had now are running the center.
Thank you. Can I, sorry, just one thing very quickly. When you tell that story about the kids who were left in a room, we didn't say very much about how the blind are treated in a lot of cultures because of all these prejudices and superstitions. And it's pretty bad. I mean, even in this country, we had, there were 3 Liberian men at the Institute in India. And they told me that in Liberia, you know, the blind are believed to have can do witchcraft. And so people never wanted to take their money. They were afraid to touch the money of a blind person. When one of them went blind, the villagers surrounded his house and shouted abuse at the family and said, you need to take that boy and bring him out into the bush where the demons live and abandon him, because the presence of that blind boy in our village is going to bring something bad to this village. And this is happening in a lot of places, not just Tibet. It happens in Tibet, it happens in a lot of the developing world. This is happening. I did a radio show through Baruch College the other day, and I was talking with a guy who went blind in his 20s. His father was from Greece. And he said to me, when I lost my eyesight because of retinitis pigmentosa, my father was convinced that my blindness was due to some sin he had committed. Now this is a guy from Halkidiki, northern Greece. Greece is a modern European country, and the father's now probably 75 years old. But these feelings are very strong and very hard to get rid of. And this is something, I mean, I've written about that a lot in this book, that I have to remind myself to tell people. Paul and Sabriye had a student who had been locked in a room for 11 years. Brutal, right?
Yeah. But by the way, the book, I read the book last week. She didn't want to give it to us.
I was a little nervous about it.
So
you write about people, you can write the most flattering portrait of a person, and you know what they say? My hair isn't really like that. It happens.
Well, luckily she didn't say anything about my hair. But,
yes, I did.
oh yeah, you did. But I changed then my haircut, you know. Now, the thing is, because she was nervous to give it to us, we became a bit nervous to read it. And then we thought, oh, let's read it on the plane, you know. And we heard the audio version, and by the way, it's read by Rose. And I could not stop laughing. And I was laughing, I was sometimes also in tears almost, but not because it was pitifully written, but it was, at points, it was really, really funny. It was, a lot of irony also, you know, and how she describes, even how you describe me, and it was quite funny. I didn't expect that. But, and then on top of it, for all the blind people who are here, the audio version is amazingly well written. I mean, you know her voice. She has this very blind-friendly radio voice. Sometimes you hear her and hi, I'm Rose. So she trained that very well to please the blind. But the voice is great, and the reading is really great because especially the most funny parts, you crack up because it's written, it's read in a statement voice, tone, you know, it's very well done, I really must say.
Well, it's, you know, I'm glad that Sabriye and Paul find the book funny because, you know, when you tell people I've written a book about blindness, they just look at you. And you know they're thinking, oh my God, depressing. Oh, and blindness in India. What could be worse? And the thing is, it's a lot of people who've read it have said to me it's hysterically funny, and not because I'm a funny person, but the students are funny, and very funny things happen. And this is, you know, it's a boon for me that Sabriye likes to tell people that the book is funny. That's really the word that I want to get out about it. You know, it's not all sadness and seriousness.
I think it's not only funny, but you learn a great deal. You learn a great deal, and it's entertaining on top of it. I think that I've read many books as well, and I have not read that many books that are entertaining, funny, and you learn incredibly.
And you learn a lot about blindness.
Absolutely.
And how blindness was perceived in this world. And of course, how people experimented with people that are blind or deaf. I don't want to say too much, but it's sometimes it's quite shocking also.
Okay, we have another question.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all of you for this really spellbinding presentation. I wanted to ask this. Sabriye, it sounds like your description of the projects that you've worked on you're surrounded by people who come from very difficult backgrounds, and many people who really have very little in the way of possessions and physical or material things that have allowed them to learn or to develop themselves. How did you arrive at the name Braille Without Borders? Because I don't get the sense that there's a lot of Braille in the background of many of these people. And for those of us in this room who are surrounded by technology, and I know you must know a lot about the great technology that's out there, how does that fit into what incredible things you're accomplishing now, both in southern India and in Tibet?
Yeah. So first of all, we have to make a difference between Kantari and Braille Without Borders. These are two completely different projects. Of course, they came from each other, or you mentioned it's a sister project. Yeah, it could be a sister project, but sisters can develop in very different ways, you know. So now Kantari is not really so much about Braille. We do have a lot of blind people, and of course we love Braille, but Braille Without Borders, how did we come to Braille Without Borders? For me, Braille was the door opener to the world. I was first a sighted little kid, and then a partially sighted little older kid, and I had my ophthalmologist gave me all these big magnifying screens. I had to read with a magnifying screen, which went well in the beginning, or with a glass, magnifying glass, which went well in the beginning. And slowly but steadily, I really ran into incredible headaches. And I didn't like reading anymore. I started to hate reading. And this is not very motivating for a kid. I know that a lot of ophthalmologists say, well, you have to train your eyesight, but I would have wished that they had given me Braille lessons much earlier. And nobody knew about it, that actually a partially sighted kid can also learn Braille and relax a little bit and use the eyesight as a plus, and not just straining the eyes for trying to be like a sighted person. So for me, when I started to discover Braille, basically I learned Braille in a couple of hours, and it is possible. I was so hungry for reading, and I discovered very quickly that actually the index fingers, the fingers are the actual substitute for reading with the central vision, because somehow it felt so natural to read Braille. I learned all the Braille characters. Of course, I was not fluent right away, But I learned all the Braille characters in a couple of hours, and I was just fascinated, and I was the happiest person I could be. Now, for me, Braille was always something that was empowering, and it was progressing, and it was a catalyzer. Later, I found out that Braille is not that loved in the world anymore, and I feel heartbroken when I hear or when I heard stories like Nima, for example, our Nima, nomad kid from an area where nobody reads and writes. He went to England, he went to Sussex, and he met the school there, and the teachers told him, well, we are not so interested in Braille anymore because Braille is slow. And it slows down the kids. So the kids are more, they are more into computers and audio, you know. And then Nima told his story, and then he talked to the teachers in front of the whole school. He said, you know what? If you don't read Braille and you have never read another language or another script, I must tell you, you are illiterate. And this is a nomad kid coming from Tibet, going to England, you know, to tell this. So for us, Braille Without Borders, of course, means we can work anywhere in this world. And we are very, very strong on providing or on campaigning Braille for the world, and especially in developing countries. But Braille Without Borders also means that we don't want to set borders or limits for the blind. That we feel we need to empower the blind through Braille, through lots of other skills as well, communication skills, to really conquer the world.
We have time for one more question.
Actually, I have two questions. One for Sabriye. I have to do two. One for Sabriye and Paul. How can we support your work? And for Rose, in the review that I read about your book, you were quoted as saying that you felt lonely at times being the only sighted person. Could you explain that?
Did I say that? I'll tell you, I don't know where the review that was. There was a moment. This institute is at the edge of a lake, and there are a lot of snakes in this part of India. And I don't particularly love snakes. And this is a true story. I'm sitting with 7 of the students by the lake. We had a magazine, and we were the editorial board, and they're all with their laptops, and they were all blind. We're sitting by the edge of the lake, and I see something twitching in the grass. And I look over, and it's a pretty big snake coming toward us. And I say to the students, there's a snake coming our way, I think we all better get up and move away. The snake comes within, let's say, 15 feet of us, and then it does this. It's a cobra. So I said, no, not only is it a snake, it's actually a cobra, so run! And the funny thing was, and I mean, I've never seen a cobra in my life, right? I've only seen it in the movies, and you see it in your real life, and you think, oh, come on, this can't be real, right? The blind participants, when I said it's a cobra, run, they were all holding their white canes. And when I said it's a cobra, they didn't run, they just lifted their hands off the ground. It was very strange, and then I realized, well, they don't know what a snake looks like. They know that sighted people really fear them. And this experience was so unbelievable, I did feel very lonely in that moment that I was the only one witnessing it. And I wanted to shout, you know, hey, Paul, come down, you gotta see this. But of course, by that time, the snake was gone. It didn't make me feel lonely, but this is a good question because a lot of sighted people say it's when I'm with a blind person, I feel invisible. They can't see me, and it makes me feel a little bit like I don't exist. And that's a real traditional reaction. But I didn't really feel terribly lonely. I mean, these people became very close friends of mine, so.
Right, to your other question. How can you help us? Well, there's different ways. Of course, we need financial support, and that's for any NGO in the world. That's a no-brainer. We do have a 501c3 here in the US, which is Friends of Braille Without Borders, which is based in Florida. And the information, you can find it on our website. There's many, many other ways of sharing, of helping that you can be part of. Rose came to our Kantari project in India, and she taught. She was sharing her skills as an author. And we call people like Rose that come and share knowledge, we call them catalysts. So we don't have teachers and students, we have catalysts and participants. They are on an equal level. So if you have anyone that you know, or maybe you yourself have experience in starting up projects, in running companies, in anything that you've done that had big challenges in it, and it has skills, and you've developed skills that are required to start projects, and you want to share those, you could come as a catalyst, as a visiting catalyst. There's other ways that you can help us is by spreading the news that we exist. Like Sabriye said, the Kantaris, they grow wild in the backyard of every home in Kerala. And so the people that we're looking for are not in the mainstream of society, they are on the edges. And not all of them have access to internet. So you might have traveled and you know someone out there that has who's incredibly motivated to change something on this planet, but they don't have access to any education, or they don't have any diplomas that can get them into business schools or any school in the world. Our project takes in people with no pre-education. They have to have a vision, also with, of course, but they don't necessarily have to have education. They have to speak English, have basic computer skills, and they have to come with a vision. And we always say it's much easier to educate motivated people than it is to motivate educated people. So, and that's the thing that so if you know people out there, or you have networks of people that are interested in social programs, please tell them that Kantari exists. And divert them or give a reference to our website, kantari.org, so people can look us up, and there's an online application form where people can apply for the next course.
Oh, can I just add to this? After I wrote this article for Oprah, it appeared in the magazine, and her friend, Gail King, you know who she is, liked it a lot and gave it to Oprah and said, "You got to read this about this amazing blind German woman," and Oprah liked it, and she had Sabriye on her TV show, right? And so, but what happens is, you go on Oprah and people think, oh, she's on Oprah, the money must be rolling in. People are throwing money at them now. They must be very successful, and so they think, we don't need to donate money. That's not true. They got no money because of that show. And, you know, but Paul and Sabriye are very well known. They do a lot of public speaking, they travel a lot. And, you know, people adore them wherever they go. And I think people think, well, because they're well known, they don't need our financial support. They work every day trying to make that place survive.
So thank you very much. That's the formal end of the program, but please go upstairs to the second floor where we'll have a reception, and the elevators are right around the corner to the right, and our staff can assist people as well. Thank you so much for coming.